Hey everyone, it's Delaina with Manor House Creations, and I want to show you a layout that I'm creating using some of the brand new beautiful Manor House flowers. The mix that I've used here include Poetry Mix, Idyllic White, which is this flower here. The Poetry Mix is actually, this is the center flower here, the center of the flower I should say, right here. The beautiful pink flowers are the Idyllic Pink, and also the Whimsy Mix. This is out of the package of Whimsy Mix. The blue flower is in the Sublime Mix. So you can just see just a pretty array of gorgeous Manor House flowers. And this is sort of the direction I'm going with my layout. I just wanted to sort of give you a hint of what it's going to look like. The finished product is going to have a few more embellishments. The first thing I want to show you is how I created this background area here using a stencil and some glass bead gel. So I'm going to clear everything away and just give you a little demonstration of how I did that. You can see it's sort of a lattice effect look. I used this mask here to achieve this. You could use a stencil or even punch something out of a heavy cardstock and it would work just as well for you. So I'm going to lay this to the side and I'll show you how I achieved that actual look with a piece of white cardstock. I've got the modeling, actually I almost said modeling paste. This is actually glass bead gel, the golden gel medium. Beautiful on its own. It's a white color, and it's just got the really pretty delicate little micro clear beads inside. If you can't find the glass bead gel, you can always use the Martha Stewart micro beads and some modeling paste. Those mix up and create sort of the same effect. Because I wanted this a color, I actually scooped a little out into just a disposable bowl. Just about that much will do. And I used, it's a true blue color, but it's going to be a little lighter, in fact a good bit lighter when you mix it with the white. So to keep from adding too much, I use a piece of leftover acrylic and just drop just a drop of paint there, and then with my spatula I pick up just a hint of the color. You can see a little bit of color with this goes a long way. So what I'm going to do is just stir this in using my spatula, and you can see the color is lightening up to a really pretty light blue color, sort of a baby blue color, maybe a little darker than that, but you can see just a little bit of that navy color went a long way to create this lighter color. So once you have that nice and mixed, lay your stencil or your mask on your page. Since I made the 12 by 12 a little smaller, I could sort of not be so specific with this, so I'm just going to lay this here. Scoop a good bit of the gel on my spatula, and then just holding it in place with my hand, I'm going to just glide it across. You don't have to get every little inch of the mask. I'm being as careful as I can to get as much of it as I can, but if you miss some, that is perfectly okay. You will still like the results. And once you have it on here, leave it piled on just a little. If you go back and totally try to remove it, you're not going to have as much texture and dimension. So just sort of leave it scooped on a little thick and just continue down your stencil. And I'm just going to continue to sort of fill in the spots that I've missed. Trying not to get on the outside of the stencil. It's not a problem if you do that. I just kind of like a clean look on the outside. So I try hard not to go over the edge of the actual mask. Okay, so once we have that in, you can see I didn't hit all the outside areas. Just sort of put your fingernail under the top here and pull it straight up. I sort of hold here so that it doesn't slide, and then you can sort of pull it straight up and off, and you can see that is the effect that you're left with. And I just love it. This is a really pretty lattice look, and since I'm using an outdoor photo, I thought the lattice effect worked very well. And what I normally do is you'll get a little puckering in your paper because it does dampen it just a little. I usually put mine in front of a fan on low, and after about 15 minutes it's pretty dry to touch, and you're able to go on with your layout. But normally about 24 hours is required before you can lay something on top of it heavy, because it'll flatten out and you'll lose your texture. So when it's dry, it'll be a little lighter, a little brighter, and you'll be able to see the little micro beads in there. I know it's kind of hard to see on camera, but it's just a really pretty technique. I really think you'll enjoy it. So we're going to lay this to the side and move on. And you can see this is completely dry now, and it's a little brighter than when it's wet, so it just gives a really pretty glistening effect. I don't think that you can actually see that on camera, but it's just a really pretty, and it feels great. The texture is just wonderful. I did just a straight line. If you know from my scrapping pages, I like to keep it kind of clean. I love the techniques, but I always like to keep it kind of clean and have my white background show up. So with my particular ones, you will see a little bit of white space behind, but you could do that all over. You could just use pieces of your stencil or your mask and create the look that you like. So I'm going to go ahead and continue building the layout, and I'm going to start with this little square of, well, it's actually a rectangle, little piece of pink with white polka dot paper. And today I'm going to use my wet glue, just because using the wet glue is I actually used the 3-in-1 craft glue. It gives me the opportunity to shift and move around just a little. I also love, of course, my tapes, but with this one with the texture underneath, I'm going to use my wet glue today. So just going to apply a little wet glue. Maybe overdid that there just a little. Apply this right about here. Just want to offset it, and I'm just sort of sliding this around to move some of that glue around. My squeeze was a little too hard for that first dollop there. I'll be a little careful with the rest, but I just want to offset that just a little from the actual masking here. I will use my tape runner for my photo. I don't always love the effect of the wet glue behind the photos, so I will actually use my tape runner for the photo. And again, we want to just offset the photo just a little here from the actual masking and the little paper there. I've got some really pretty flowers. Of course, these are Manor House flowers. I love these flowers. Just a little dollop of glue under each one, and I always use the wet glue for the flowers. It just always helps me, so that if I need to go back and shift and move around with my clusters, I can do that. I'm going to add a pretty paper flower here that I cut from some gorgeous Kaiser craft paper. I'll add that right about there. A really pretty pink flower, just a dollop of glue under. I like to sort of turn the flowers and get them in a position that they sort of fit pretty well together. Add that right about there. This flower I actually pulled from the center of one of the white flowers, like the blue, and I just sort of pulled it from the center, and gives me a little smaller flower to play with, but I still get the same shape and not quite the dimension though, but I like the look of that, so we'll add that right about there. Have a few more flowers here for this side. Add one right about here. And then another beautiful white flower. Add that right about here. And again, I like to sort of twist and turn them until they sort of fit together nicely. I have a little paper flower that I cut, still from the Kaiser Craft paper. Just want to tuck it right about here. Just gives a little color and a little extra dimension there. And a leaf. I love this lime green color in these leaves and in this paper. Tuck it in and behind the flowers, like so. Okay, you can sort of see where I'm going with that. Banners are really big right now in scrapbooking. You see them everywhere, all shapes and sizes. So I cut a few little flag type banners, and I'm just going to tuck them in and around the photo just for a little more dimension and a little extra interest. I'll tuck that in right about there. And again, using the wet glue, you have a little opportunity to shift and move them around. Dries pretty quickly, but it gives you a little bit of play time. So that's why I like to use the wet glue with pieces like this. Have a few more banner pieces here that I've cut, and again I've used similar papers, but these are just scraps that I had left over from some cards or layouts or some different things that I had made. This glue's a little stringy. Tuck this in right about here. You can see I'm just generously adding the glue, but you don't need a lot, especially with the thinner papers. You really don't need a lot to hold it in place. I like to add it to the back portion so that I have the opportunity to give a little dimension to my ends if I want to do that. So just sort of roll these up just a little, flipping them with my finger just a little, and you can see those will move around still a little. Okay, we have that there. The next thing I want to add are some little bling pieces. These are pearl blings, and they come in packaging in one piece, and what I've done is gone in and just really closely cut right up to the edge of the actual pearls. I left the acrylic adhesive on the back. I'm going to add just a little wet glue just here. Helps to give those a little dimension. I like for those to sort of appear to be in flight, I guess you'd say. I like to kind of stand those up a little on my pages. You can use your flowers to do that, or put a little pop dot behind there. Just give that dimension that that you like for your pages to have. Just put a few of those in and around this flower cluster. And this is actually one entire that's a little much glue, but it'll work out. This is one entire actual cluster of a pearl bling, but I've just cut it into many pieces to help it go a long way. And you can see I'm just randomly adding that in and around my flowers. Okay, and the last one I have here is a little bit bigger pearls. So I want to cut this down a little and just add this about here. And then another piece right about here. Okay, just gives that dimension. And sometimes I'll go back and rearrange those or add a few more. Just whatever you like to do, however you see it. The next thing I have are just a few bling pieces, some in the darker pink and the pearl pieces. I like to just sort of add those in and around on my page. These particular ones come in a long string attached together with glue, and I just kind of cut the glue adhesives between, and then with my Tim Holtz scissors, just pick that up, and I can add those just in and around my page. Again, just for a little extra element, and a little more dimension. I'll put those kind of under my flowers, or sometimes out in the open. It's just kind of what I feel like the page is needing that on that particular day or whatever. So you can kind of see. I'm going to choose kind of a smaller one here as well. And you can see these are really easy to remove with the scissors. Add one or two of these lighter bling pieces. These are a little harder to pick up with the scissors, but I do manage. A couple of the smaller pink pearls. And there's going to be a variety of blings with this. Oh, there it went. Just a variety of blings with this particular one. I'm going to use a few of these darker pink ones. I'm also going to add some stitching to this page, just around the outside white border portion. I always, well, not always, but I like to have a good bit of stitching normally, or at least some form of stitching, either a sewn button or something along those lines on my page. And I'm just trying to make up my mind about where I'd like to see these bling pieces, and I may go back once the video is off and rearrange these or add a few more. It's sometimes it's a little difficult to do this with the camera running, but you can sort of see the direction I'm going in, just adding these in and around the page. And I can already tell you probably I'm going to have some of these rearranged before my final photo, so always check out my final photo and be sure that that it is the way that I actually started. I think we'll just put this here and remove the pearl from there for now. Okay, so we'll leave that like that for now, and I'll move on and show you my actual stitching process. What I want to do is a border of stitching around the outside edge. I love this particular ruler. I've had it for a long time. It is a Perfect Layers ruler. I'm not sure who actually made it, but you can see it has different grids and lines here, and they're raised up so that you can lay them against your paper for a straight line. So I always love to use this particular ruler, and I just sort of lay it to the side. I can follow my line so that I'm sure I'm getting a pretty straight line, and I always use a pencil because that's more forgiving. You can erase. I do a really light pencil mark just down the edges. You see that I follow it around here on this side. Again, I'm going to line up my edges, and again, very light line. Did really good there, getting pretty close. Same thing here. I'm just going to line this up. It's a little harder with the camera on. Like I said, some of this is not as easy with the camera running, so I may make a few changes. So always check out the finished product and just be sure if you want to recreate what I'm actually doing. Okay, and there are my pencil lines. If you happen to go over off of your square, just erase. I always use a white eraser. The white erasers tend not to leave any residue behind. So you can sort of see how we're going with that. To get my actual holes pierced in the paper, I use an old Colossal pad, the old Colossal system that we that we used to use. I still have my pads, so those are what I use to actually pierce through. You can use a thicker piece of cardboard, or they make stitching foam pads that you can use. An actual foam pad, maybe 2 of those that you might get from your hobby store would work. But when I do straight lines here, I just go in with my piercer. I always start at the corner, and I poke the hole there, and then about every 1/4 of an inch, like every 1/4 of an inch, I pierce a hole all the way around, and I'll repeat that all the way around. For the stitching, I always use DMC floss. It's pretty ready, available here in the United States. Hobby Lobby, Michael's, different stores like that carry it. This is the DMC floss, and I have hundreds of these. There are so many colors. It's one of my favorite things to shop for. Sometimes make the trip to the hobby store just to get the floss. Well, that's not going to work if I tear that apart, but I start by tying a knot. I like to use the larger sewing needles. My needles are real sewing needles, so I'm always careful not to stick myself, although I do that. There are a lot of craft needles and different things that you can use. I prefer the really thin sewing needles because I don't like to see gapes in the holes that I've created. And you can see with this cardstock, I've cut it down about an inch on both sides. It's about a 1/2 inch smaller on each side of this 12 by 12 floral background paper. And I'll just kind of flip this over and show you. I usually cut a chunk out of the center of my paper. I don't like to waste paper, and with this pretty floral, you can see that's where I sort of cut out my little pieces that I use to go on my paper. So I'll just start my stitching by going in. I'm going to have a knot here on the back that I'm going to pull out and lay down, and later I will use a piece of acid-free tape to actually tape that down. And then I'm going to cover the back of my actual layout with another piece of cardstock to sort of cover up the messy look. Probably doesn't matter to anybody but me, but I just like for it to be really neat. And you can see I go in here, and then back in. Sewing process is different, I guess, by everybody. Everybody has a certain way that they do it. This is just the method that I like to use, just in and out. And you can see on the back, I'm sort of doing a double stitch here, having to go back over where I just was. But in the end result, you get sort of an in and out motion on the back, and it's really a clean look. You can see that as I go back in there, when you look at the back, you're going to have every other stitch done, and it'll just be a really neat process. And then I go and cover it up with a piece of cardstock, so it doesn't matter anyway. But on the front, I'm going to get a solid line here, and the stitches about every 1/4 of an inch so that they look pretty even. And we're going to do that all the way around the layout. I won't bother to do that on camera, but that stitching will go all the way around. And I will go back in and check out again to be sure that I like where I have my bling pieces. Sometimes I add a little of the Viva Decor paint pen or the pearl pen. It comes in lots of different colors, and I may do a few dots of this actual paint in and around. Again, it adds to some of the dimension. It's a distressing, not necessarily distressing, but it is a technique idea for your page when you do like to keep it a little cleaner, when you don't like to go grungy. And I really do like the shabby look. Love the grunge, but for my own pages, I tend to like that background being more white. But that's my page. I will finish the stitching, and I'll have a photo up of the actual finished product for you to look at close up. Hope you enjoyed this today. I really enjoyed making this for you.